Deployments, the final frontier of the coding process, and for many, the most satisfying. It feels amazing to write your first working trigger, but it's even better getting it deployed to an actual production org with real users. My name is David Liu, and this is the final module of the first Apex Academy course. It has been an honor teaching you thus far. Let's deploy code. Here's an overview of what we'll be talking about during this module. First, I'll give you an overview of what a deployment is and why it's important. There are specific requirements you need to be aware of when deploying. I'll teach you those, as well as the deployment best practices that are all the rage these days. I want you to go into your Apex cocktail conversations with confidence that you know the most popular coding practices. Next, we'll talk about what happens behind the scenes during a deployment. Then, we'll talk about the different deployment methods and their pros and cons. And finally, we'll deploy code we've covered so far in this course into an actual org. Let me show you. First, let's start off with an overview of what a deployment is. A deployment is a process that simply copies components from one org to another. Typically, this is done from a sandbox org to a production org. If you don't know what those things are, a production org is the main Salesforce org that your users are actively logging into and using. A sandbox org is just a copy of your production org that's basically your playground to do whatever you want without worrying about breaking production. You can deploy components from your sandbox into production, and you can also deploy components from your production org into your sandbox. Heck, you can even deploy code from your free Developer Edition org to another free Developer Edition org. We'll do a demo of that later. Deployments are a very powerful tool in Salesforce because there are so many types of components that can be deployed. You can deploy code, of course, including Apex triggers and test classes, but there's so much more you can deploy too. Even declarative type of components can be deployed, such as custom objects and fields, validation rules, page layouts, dashboards and reports, and yes, even our declarative automation friends, the workflow rule and process builder. There are many more types of components that can be deployed too, but the list is too long to show here. Basically, if there's a component you want to deploy, you probably can.